All right, it's a live episode of Locked On Pelicans after the Pelicans were just embarrassed at home. Here's what they need to do going forward and to win back fans. It's an angry cast episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans and NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, at Nola Jake on Twitter. Here with y'all on this. It's technically a Wednesday night. We're doing a live show, but this is the Thursday episode of Locked On Pelicans, and we are not going to hold back in this one. This was about as bad of a loss as you've ever seen the Pelicans have, losing to the Portland Trail Blazers 119-100, down 33 points to a 12-win team at one point. So we're going to break down what happened in this game, talk about what the Pelicans need to do going forward, not just to right the ship, but also to win back fans, because the attendance in this game was really, really rough. So we're going to break it all down for you. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. And if you're an everydayer in the live show right now, let me know in the comments here. So a couple of things for the live shows. I haven't done one yet this season, but quick housekeeping here. Please, please, please don't spam the chat. I'll see everything. What I'm going to do is do the regular show here. And then after that, we have a bonus fourth segment. It won't be available on the audio side. It'll only be available on YouTube, where you can ask your questions. So if you come in with a question, I will not get to it until after I do the whole 3 segments of the show here. But I see your comments. We'll answer those and do that and go as long as we want. At the end of the show is kind of a bonus here. So let's get into everything. Pelicans losing to the Portland Trail Blazers 119-100, down 33 points to a 12-23 win team. So first and foremost, on the surface, look, them losing is good. You want them to lose games. You want to get a top 5 pick, a top 3 pick. Portland eventually is going to really be tanking, particularly if they end up trading someone like DeAndre Ayton or others. And this just means you put a little bit of distance there. So in a weird way, this is a good thing. This is a good thing that you lose this game. But one of the things that I've talked a lot about this year is this team should not look this bad. It's one thing to lose games. It's another thing to lose games in the fashion that you are. And it's really rough right now. So many blowouts when there's enough talent here. This team started Herb Jones, DeJounte Murray, CJ McCollum. You shouldn't be down 33 points. Here's the thing with this one too. Portland is not good. They held New Orleans in the first half to, what was the total amount here? 24 points in the first quarter, 18 in just the second, right? That's not a good number. That's 42 points in the first half as the Portland Trail Blazers put up 75. Portland has the 26th ranked defense. It's not like it's hard to score on them. This is not the Thunder. You should put up more than 42. You shouldn't have an 18-point quarter, regardless of Zion Williamson not playing or Brandon Ingram not playing. They also have a crap offense. They're worse on offense. They're 27th. They put up 75 in the first half. It's just not working. It's just not working. It's that simple. This team should not be this bad. And look, the fan base knows it. And this show is really going to be about what they need to do to win you, the fans, back to get people into the Smoothie King Center, because there wasn't 500 people in the upper bowl. The lower bowl was not even close to being filled. It was a dismal performance by the team, and no one showed up to even watch it. That's not great. So here's the first thing the team needs to do. I'm going to make there should be no gray area with this, in my opinion, what I'm trying to say here. They need to fire Willie Green tonight or tomorrow morning. Simple as that. Look, I don't think he's a bad coach. I don't think he's a bad coach at all. He's dealt with a ton of injuries to Zion Williamson, Brandon Ingram, the best players, and your best players are the ones that should carry you. He's been dealt a crap hand, and he's doing the best with what he can with it. But there needs to be some accountability. There has to be some accountability. At this point, it's not okay. You're on the verge of losing the fan base, in my opinion. Otherwise, people would have been there. Tickets are cheap, and no one even wanted to go. Now, it's cold out. The parking situation's bad. More on that in the next segment. Prices for beers and concessions maybe are too high. All of those things are a factor into it. It was a Wednesday. Maybe people just want to stay in. All those things. But this is not sustainable for an NBA franchise right now. And you just need to do something that shows like, we're not okay with this, right? With what the Pelicans are, for better or worse, fair or unfair, lumped in with the Saints. And there was definitely too much inaction when it came to Dennis Allen, making it look like ownership doesn't care. Now, I don't think Gayle Benson needs to sell the team. I don't actually think that at all. If anything, the one thing Gayle Benson has is a little too much loyalty to Mickey Loomis, but that's a different situation entirely than the Pelicans are. But you saw them not make the right decision early on with Dennis Allen when it was pretty obvious what they needed to do. And that makes them look apathetic or like they're okay with this, when I know they're not. It was Gayle Benson's decision to fire Dennis Allen. So you've got to do something that just shows there is accountability here and that what you're seeing is not okay, because a big chunk of the fan base thinks ownership is totally fine with this. And I promise you they're not. But that's words from me. You need to see actions from them. And that's not something that you have seen from the team right now. So this is something that absolutely needs to change and needs to happen. You have to fire head coach Willie Green. This is going to get into something that we're going to talk about in the third segment too. The season is lost. If Willie Green's not going to be your head coach next season, there's no reason to have him here right now. There isn't. I don't think making a change is going to do much different for the team. They're pretty bad. There's some roster issues. Firing him is not going to turn this team around, but it shows accountability. It shows that you're not okay with this. And that is a strong message to send, and one that needs to be sent to the fans too. We'll see if I don't know if they'll do that. I don't really feel like they will, but I wouldn't be shocked if they make that kind of change tomorrow. But you've got to do something like that just to show that, like, yeah, right, this isn't okay, and this isn't acceptable. And that's not what you're seeing from the team right now, right? Show you care. They care. I promise you they care. You got to show it. Actions speak louder than words. We use all the cliches right there. That needs to happen first and foremost. You've got to show that there's accountability there. You start with the head coach. Look, the Kings are playing well once they fired Mike Brown. And that was lambasted, right? That was definitely not the correct decision to do. Everyone around the league hated that. And I think New Orleans is a little bit worried about the bad publicity that might come with making a move like that. But the Kings have won 5 straight. There's something there worked, right? Kind of simple as that. So you really got to do something, because the way that you are losing is not okay whatsoever. Look, might be the roster's bad and Willie Green's just the fall guy and a scapegoat. Yeah, probably. But that's just how it goes sometimes. That's what these head coaches sign up for, right? Like, that's what you know you're getting into. So you start there. And that can happen tonight, can happen tomorrow night, tomorrow morning, but you got to do that soon. So coming up next, what about you, the fans, and making this experience better? I'm going to tell you what this team needs to do, probably what they will be doing too, and why it probably won't be enough. Let's get into that coming up next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is my go-to ticketing app, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. I love being there at live events, particularly basketball. I just love basketball. It's really fun. And Game Time is my go-to ticketing app because it makes getting tickets to live events even easier with all of their features. And they have a new feature called Game Time Picks. This feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. If you're going to a venue you've never been to before, it's particularly great because you get a panoramic view from your seat before you buy, so you get the exact seats that you're looking for. They also have super deals, last minute deals too. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is also brought to you by Rocket RX. If you're ready to get a boost for your confidence and take control in the bedroom, Rocket RX has the solution. Imagine feeling more prepared and performing at your best. Rocket RX makes it simple and stress-free. Rocket RX is an FDA-approved treatment for erectile dysfunction at lower cost than branded alternatives. No more uncomfortable doctor visits or pharmacy trips. Everything's delivered straight to your door in discreet, plain packaging. And with Rocket RX, you'll get trusted care from a real U.S. clinical team. Complete a quick 100% online consultation, and you could get your free prescription today. So visit rocketrx.com and get started now. It only takes 2 minutes. And right now, listeners can get 40% off your first order when you use code LOCKEDONNBA. That's rocketrx.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for 40% off your first order. Terms and conditions apply. Rocket RX, better sex made simple. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. That's a good comment right there. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team here. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Join over 11,000 Pelicans fans, not other fans here, just Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. And go support the show. If you love Locked On Pelicans, if you're an everydayer and you want to support, we don't ask for money. I'm not going to charge you to read your comments or something like that on here. You can go and just subscribe to the Locked On Pelicans daily newsletter. Just sign up for free now at lockedondaily.com. Find the Locked On Pelicans logo, click on that, sign up, and you're going to start your day with the all-new free Locked On Pelicans daily newsletter in your inbox. So let me read the comment out because that one was like really, really, really good here. Behind door number 1 says, does Rocket RX work on basketball teams? I actually almost made that joke during the read, but you got to be professional here. But that's very, very good comment. I'm going to give you that one here. That made me laugh. It's tough to throw me off. I'm a professional after all here. So let's get into more about what the Pelicans need to do going forward. As I said, the first thing they've got to do, this is what the show is about. What do you do here? Fire Will. You have to fire him. Whether you think he should be fired or not, like it's just a decision you have to make at this point. You're at home. You're down 33 to an awful team with the 26th ranked defense, 27th ranked offense. And that's what happens here. I don't know how many times, I think I've said it 2 or 3 times that it's been like rock bottom losses for New Orleans. Here we are again. Right? Like that's just, it's not okay. Like it's not okay. It's one thing to lose. You could have the same record you have right now, but losing closer games would be an entirely different thing. But that's not what's happening here. So it changes the conversation, right? So let's talk about what they need to do for you, the fans. The first thing they need to do, and I promise you they are actively trying to figure some of this out, is they need to lower ticket prices for next season. And I'm going to tell you this right now from inside sources. I believe they are going to lower ticket prices across the board, but I only think it's going to be like $100. Like if your tickets are $4,000 for the season and they lower it $100, they can say they technically lowered prices across everywhere, right? Like your tickets are cheaper and they're going to blast that out as the messaging and all of that. But that's not a substantial difference, is it? That's not something that actually really does much for you. Technically, it's true. They lowered prices. It shouldn't just be a technicality that they get to say that. They need to significantly lower prices. I don't know if they can do that financially or if they will do that. But usually that's when you kind of go with a reset and a full-on rebuild, and that's not what this team is going to do. We talked about it for the Everydayers in yesterday's show, right? You know, after you saw Zion against the Timberwolves, it reminds you like, oh yeah, you should still try and build around him. Just because, look, once you start that rebuild, you don't know when you're getting out of that. Look at the Wizards, right? They lost to the Pelicans twice. It's a team that's kind of been resetting for a minute, and they haven't gone anywhere. You know, Houston is on like a 7-year playoff drought, and they're just kind of back into contention when it comes to that. The Sacramento Kings had like a 13-year playoff drought. Was it 20 years? I forget exactly what it was, right? For years, Phoenix was terrible. Portland doesn't look like they're getting out of this anytime soon. When is Charlotte getting out of this, right? You could talk about all of these teams and it's like, yeah, it's going to be a minute till they're competitive again. That can be a real long time. So for the people who are like trade Zion, trade BI, like, yeah, it's not great because at least you'll be competitive next year with Zion Williamson, and more on what that could look like in the next segment here. But you have to lower prices. Can you lower them to the point of like the full rebuild prices? No, they won't do that. It's probably what they should at least, I don't think they should do that, but they need to drop them significantly. For this type of product, look, when you sign up for season tickets, you don't for sure know if the team's going to be good or bad, right? Like that's just what it is. And that's not a great position to be in. So that's a team that, you know, it's part of just getting season tickets. It's a little bit of a risk here when it comes to that sort of thing. So you look at that and you go, oh, okay. You know, that's not a great spot for this team to be in here. But by the way, 2019-2020 is 5 seasons ago. So there you go. 5-season drought for the Houston Rockets. And now they're just getting out of it. And we didn't expect them to be good this season either. So you've got to lower prices just to reflect what has happened, not what it is going forward. They think they're going to be good next year, and what they're going to try and sell is, like, we're going to be good next year. Zion will be healthy. Look at how we've played recently if they go on a bit of a run at the end of the regular season. But that doesn't matter. You need to lower the prices based on what has happened this season, not what has happened in the past. Not what... I don't know why I got since bad. You need to lower the prices next season for what has happened this year in the past, not what it could be in the future, because if you don't know if that's going to be an actual thing. So you have to lower prices for fans. It's that simple. You need to lower concessions a little bit, or you need to make some sort of deals where it's like 2 sodas, 2 hot dogs for $15 or something like that. You just have to do it where if you make it cheap enough, people show up, and that's a good thing. The parking situation with the Superdome and the Super Bowl and not being able to park there is like a mess right now. It absolutely is. But that's not something that they have any control over. And so I feel for them a little bit when it comes to that. But you need to do something like monetary for the team to be able to, you know, for the fans to kind of make good on that. Yeah, it might not be the Pelicans' fault that you're having to deal with this, but it sure as heck ain't the fans' fault. So you've got to do something like that. I don't know if it means you just get a credit, right? You buy season tickets, you get that kind of like virtual credit. You know, for people, it can be like $500, $600 for certain tickets. I think that's like what mine was this year on my season tickets that I have. Just give people more of that. Be like, by the way, here's $200 in concessions credits. When they come to games, it makes it cheaper. There are things that they can do, and they need to break out the stops. Now, I do think there are good perks with season tickets. You don't get some of the things that you get, that like courtside warm-up thing. You don't get that in other cities. These tickets are also cheaper than they are in other cities too. But it doesn't matter. You got to do something to earn the goodwill of the fans. And the best way to do that is by lowering prices significantly. You also lower prices significantly. You trade Brandon Ingram. Maybe you trade CJ McCollum. You get a high draft pick. You still keep Zion. You can kind of pitch it as a bit of a fresh start. One of the things people love to be is in on the ground floor of something. I was one of the first people there. You know, you can make hipster jokes about this, right? Like I used to like PBR before it became cool, or I liked this band before they blew up. And it makes you feel like you were there in the beginning. You knew it was going to be something. There's something that makes you feel good about recognizing that and then kind of being rewarded when that thing blows up and becomes good. That's a very real thing when it comes to basketball and sports. You want people to be in there rooting for the team and feeling like they're on the ground floor of something, right? If you price people out, no one gets in on the ground floor. So make it cheap so that people can jump in on the reset that you're going to have. And there will be a reset. You're going to see a very different starting lineup likely next season. There won't be Brandon Ingram in there. There probably won't be CJ McCollum in there potentially. All of that makes it feel fresh and new. And if you lower prices, people are like, oh, it's definitely going to be different this year. If you run it out with Ingram and Zion again and CJ again, you're like, no, we're healthy this time. Everyone's going to say, we already saw that already. We don't believe you. But if it's enough of a change with the roster or the coaching staff, and you lower prices, people will buy season tickets and they will show up because people want to be on the ground floor of something that could be good. And that is what you're going to end up seeing. They need to actually lower the prices to be able to do that, though. Otherwise, people won't show up. So that's what they need to do. Like first and foremost, show some accountability like you care. Again, they do care, but show it with actions. And then make it cheaper for people to go to games. If you made it cheap, people would have shown up. This was by far the worst attended game that I've seen. And it wasn't like there was one of those, it wasn't like that Kings game earlier in the year, which was kind of added in last minute on a Thursday because of the way the in-season tournament stuff worked. This was one that people knew could make plans for and chose not to attend. That's not good. Lower prices, make concessions cheaper, just do something or some combination of that, right? Some combination of it to make it easier for people or cheaper for people, and they will show up at least next season. I don't think people are going to show up this season, right? Like they just killed all of the good vibes they had from that Timberwolves game literally last night with this type of performance. So you've got to lower prices, and you can't sell people on hope or anything. You need to lower prices and be like, you know what? We didn't deliver in the way that we felt we should deliver. Here's what we're going to do to make it up to you. And you just go like, we're sorry, all of that. And people come back. Simple as that. That's what they need to do. They will lower prices. I promise you. I've talked to people about this. I don't think they're going to lower them in a way that you're going to be like, heck yeah. They need to do that. Absolutely. So coming up next, we're talking about what they need to do going forward, starting with firing Willie Green. Second is lowering prices. But you still have a bunch of games left. You got a bunch of games left, right? Pelicans have played. I don't even have it in front of me here. Hold on. They are now 7-31. Oh my goodness, is that bad? I'm going to do math on the calculator here because I don't like doing math. You have 44 games left. Over half the season. You got to play them. Here's what they need to do about that going forward. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by the Ultimate College Basketball Head Coach. I want to take a moment to introduce you to a brand new mobile game that I'm really excited about. I'm a little tired today because I was up all night playing it. The Ultimate College Basketball Head Coach, HC. If you've ever dreamed of being a college basketball head coach, this is your chance to step into those shoes. In Ultimate College Basketball HC, you control every detail of your program, from recruiting players and hiring coaching staff to overseeing training camps, handing out NIL deals, managing scholarships. It's all in your hands. And when it comes to game time, you get to drop offensive plays and set your strategy. The way you play won't just affect your current season. It's also going to shape the future of your school's basketball program. It's a game that lets you feel the full weight of what it means to be a head coach and lead your team to glory. You think you're better than Willie Green? Go prove it in Ultimate College Basketball Head Coach. And here's a special offer for Locked On Pelicans listeners. Use promo code LOCKEDONCBB, all caps, LOCKEDONCBB, like college basketball, inside the game store to get a free boost for your program. It's the perfect way to kickstart your coaching career. To download Ultimate College Basketball HC, just visit ultimate-cbb.com or look it up on the app stores. That's Ultimate College Basketball HC. Begin your coaching legacy today and use promo code LOCKEDONCBB. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. Become an everydayer. That means you listen Monday through Friday to Locked On Pelicans. If you're an everydayer, this is the first live show we've done this season. I've just been very busy. It's not the easiest thing to do here. But we wanted to do this after this kind of loss. So what we're going to do next, we're going to do this segment where I talk on kind of getting a jump on the future and what they need to do for these final 44 games. And then I'll answer your questions if y'all have any. I see a couple have been put in there too. We'll answer those coming up in just a few minutes here. So it'll finally get to be a little bit interactive here, unless people are making me laugh in the comments. over there. So I appreciate y'all hanging out with me a little bit late on a Wednesday night after the Pelicans fall 119-100 to the Portland Trailblazers. It's definitely time for some changes here. So for your second listen, Locked On Saints with host Ross Jackson. I just saw Ross and Sharif Ishak the other day. I hung out with them, and it was a lot of fun. So go make Locked On Saints your second listen today. They're doing a head coaching search. Who's it going to be? Rizzy? Somebody else? If you have a favorite, let Ross Jackson know over the Locked On Saints podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So 44 games left. Does it matter what's there left to play for? It does. And look, you got to play those games. And New Orleans is actually in a weirdly, look, if you want to kind of go glass half full, this is a weirdly fortunate position for them to be in. The rest of the regular season for this year don't matter, right? It doesn't matter whatsoever. It doesn't matter whatsoever. They're not making the playoffs, right? This season is lost. This season is lost. Right now, your main goal should be to just get a top 5 pick in a pretty good 5-person, 6-person draft. That's what your goal should be going forward. So what do you do over these next, 44 games or so? And that's get a jump on the future. Everything going forward for this franchise right now needs to be about next season. None of this season matters for anybody. Herb Jones can't make all defense. He's missed too many games. None of this matters for this year, but it matters for next year. It matters the year after that. It matters the year after that. That's important. These next 44 games are arguably more important for the franchise than any other 44 games that we've seen. This is your opportunity to figure out what's good and what isn't. You're going to go into next season without Brandon Ingram, most likely, right? So if that's the case, don't play Brandon Ingram much. Don't start him. There's no reason to. Screw trying to win games right now. I don't care about that. If you get a couple here and there, that's great. I enjoy winning. But winning games this year at the expense of next season isn't doing you any good because winning more games this year doesn't matter. In fact, you could hurt your draft position a little bit. I don't think it'll matter that much there. You need to be planning for the future. And that likely means starting DeJounte Murray, Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, Zion Williamson, and Yves Missi. Do that. I don't care what CJ thinks about it. I don't care what Brandon Ingram thinks about it. You've got to start thinking about next season. If Willie Green isn't going to be your head coach next year, there's no reason to have him on here right now. If you were to fire him during the offseason and be like, we're going to interview James Borrego, give him a trial run right now. Give him a trial run right now. There's no reason not to do that. Look, Kings are on a 5-game winning streak after firing Mike Brown when everyone thought that was a bad move. And, well, they're getting that interim head coach bump here. So take advantage of that. If the Pelicans don't do that, they are wasting the remainder of the regular season, and I will be furious. Shout out Joel Venile, who showed up here. And so you need to absolutely prioritize next season today, tomorrow, Friday. When Brandon Ingram's healthy, look, you play him, that's what you do, but it's not like playing him much is going to change his trade value whatsoever. It is what it is at this point, right? No one's going to be like, 5 real good games, now let's trade for him. No one's going to think that. His value is what it is. Get a jump on next season. That's what you have to do. And if they don't, that is franchise malpractice, in my opinion. It should be Murray, Herb, Trey, Zion, Missi, assuming they're all healthy. Herb got injured in this game. You have to start doing that now. If Javonte Green isn't on the team in the future, doesn't matter, don't play him. Figure out what you got in Jordan Hawkins. He played 9 minutes last night. He played 25 in this one, and Willie Green said, I need to do a better job of getting him minutes. Look, Willie Green wants to win games because his job might be on the line. Remove that from the equation and play the young guys. Give Antonio Reeves more run. You were down 33 to an awful team. Why not play Antonio Reeves over Javonte Green? Almost 29 minutes for Green, 6 minutes of garbage time for Antonio Reeves, and the same for Carlo. It should just be the youth movement or the guys that you know will be on your roster next season. Will Willie Green do that? I don't know. Is he going to look at this game and be like, wait, Javonte Green went 2 of 5 from 3. I need to play him more. He had 7 rebounds. No. You need to bench those guys and play the guys that might be here next season and help you. That's like, you have to prioritize the future because winning a couple games here does not matter. And that's when, like, if you don't do that, trust me, we're going to be so mad on this show. And I was looking at a comment that was pretty good there too. You have to prioritize the future. And by doing that, you're going to lose games. And that's fine because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter for this season. But the way that you are losing is not okay. If you're doing that with young guys, different story. They're figuring things out. They're growing. All of that's important. But that's not even what you're getting here. And so that's what's made this season so frustrating. You have 44 games, valuable 44 games to figure this out for next year. Take advantage of that. If and when Brandon Ingram comes back and they start him, I'm going to be very frustrated. There's no need for that. Look, it's not a BI thing. Just if he's not going to be here, you gotta do it, right? You've got to prioritize the future. Next season, I don't care who's here or not. That's what you have to do. And this team better freaking do that. Look, if you realize that Murray, Herb, Trey, Zion, Misi doesn't work, you'll at least maybe be able to identify what doesn't work about that and go in there and figure it out. But if you do it where, you could just pivot off of that and be like, we're blowing it up. We're doing a full reset because this lineup sucks. That's all really important to know. If you don't play that lineup a bunch right now, and then you go into next season and be like, we hope they'll be good. I want you to hope they'll be good. I want you to know if they will or won't be good. You actually have the chance to get the data right now. That is so unbelievably valuable to this franchise. Take advantage of it. I'm getting heated here. I'm in a sweatshirt. The heat's on, and I'm going to feel like I'm going to start sweating. It's freezing out. There you go. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know in the live comments or the comments down below if you're listening after the fact. So here's what I'm going to do right now. We're going to end the show. I'm going to hit the little outro video, and then we're going to come back, and then we're going to answer your questions. I'll interact with y'all in the chat. It's the interactive bonus part of Locked On Pelicans coming up here. So I'm going to wrap it up. We're going to hit the video. Stay with me for like 30 seconds. So that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Pelicans. I appreciate you all so much for joining me live after that game. Oh, hopefully y'all home and warm and not stuck getting out of the parking garage right now. And this is the Locked On Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Go subscribe to the Locked On Pelicans daily newsletter over at lockedondaily.com. Really simple, lockedondaily.com. As always, I'm Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter, and I'll be back with y'all tomorrow. Stay for the bonus segment coming up here in a second. All right, we're back for the interactive bonus part, Locked On Pelicans After Dark. If you want, put your questions in the chat here. I've seen a couple of good ones. I've seen a couple of comments here. We'll get into those. I'll hang out with y'all for at least a little bit here. But this is why we do these, because these are kind of fun and my chance to interact with y'all in a way that we don't get to do otherwise. So this is what, I don't know. I just kind of enjoy doing these. It's been a little bit of a weird year with them not being good and interest being down. So I haven't done as many live shows as I should have done or wanted to do. But now we're here. And after this, I think we all got to talk and kind of have some sort of cathartic moment together here. Daniel Hagan says the smoothies are awful too. One flavor, it's the Smoothie King Center. There should be a massive Smoothie King in it. In general, actually, I'm a big fan of Smoothie King. I like the Gladiator, like low in calories, high in protein, get those gains. I think those are really good, but they don't have like good options in the Smoothie King Center. I think they only have like 3 flavors, and it's not the ones I want. I don't like those smoothies that are like high in calories and high in sugar and all of that. But in general, I love Smoothie King, actually. Young Kilminati says, fire the King Cake Baby. Also, nope, I love the King Cake Baby. I'm a big fan of just get weird, have a little bit of fun with it. King Cake Baby's fun, in my opinion, just like the City Edition jerseys are fun and these colors are fun. Keep King Cake Baby. It's unique. It adds like kind of a very like New Orleans flavor to things. Definitely keep King Cake Baby. I would not get rid of him whatsoever. I'm a huge King Cake Baby fan in a non-weird way here. Timothy Walker says, I refuse to go to another game until Willie Green is gone. That might be next season. I don't really know. Like I said, I think at this point, even if I don't think he's that bad of a coach, and I've seen a couple of people here, I can't find the comments, saying like, has Willie Green lost the locker room? It looks like he's lost the locker room, or the coach is trying to get him fired. No, he's definitely not lost the locker room. The players really like him. You know, I don't think they're just mailing in games or anything like that. Like, losing just takes a toll on you, like really takes a toll on you. And that's probably what it is, more so than anything else. But I don't think Willie Green's lost the locker room. I think there's just some flaws going on, and it's a lost season. That's adding to stuff like this. But I don't think Willie Green has lost the locker room like, you know, other things. I don't think there's a lot of friction there between him and some other players or anything like that. And I do think that is worth mentioning. I thought Willie Green did a good job against the Minnesota Timberwolves. I thought he managed Zion's minutes really well, and did a couple of other things that were pretty smart. Look, credit where credit's due, criticism where criticism is due too. I don't think he's like one of the worst coaches in the league, but I think at this point you've seen enough to be like, yeah, we have to make a change here. And yeah. T. Scott says, I say David Griffin's time is up. We'll see. Look, he's done some things right and he's done some things wrong. And this is something that I was talking to a couple of people about at the game too. And the consensus seems to be this, right? Like you've got to play the hand that you're dealt. And the Pelicans, when you look at, the situation that David Griffin inherited going into it, right? You thought you were getting two really good players that you could build around. You know, a lot of the Zion stuff is not Griffin's fault, right? Like, it's a Zion issue. He just hasn't been who we hoped he would be, who he should be, frankly, right? And that is not on really anyone. Could David Griffin have connected with him in a better way than he did? Could they have done other things differently? Like, yeah, absolutely, I think. But a lot of the stuff that we've seen is a Zion thing, not a franchise or other people thing. So when I look at it like that, right, like you play the hand you're dealt. Look, we're not going to revisit Ja or Zion. It was always going to be Zion. If they took Ja Morant over Zion, that whole front office should have been fired off the bat. And so you drafted the guy you were supposed to draft, that literally every team would have drafted number one overall. You got the best deal you could in the Anthony Davis trade, getting a guy that became an all-star his first season in Brandon Ingram, right? Like, that's good. You had the number one overall pick and a guy who's an all-star his first year here. Yeah, trying to build around those two guys makes a ton of sense to me. Now, there's been some missteps, right? Who's the Utah center? I'm completely blanking on that they had. And then they went to Steven Adams. You know, they've tried that deal for Devontae Graham, I think was really bad too. There were a couple things that really messed them up, but you also have Trey, Herb, Misi, Jose Alvarado, and a bunch of other guys that they've done a really good job of finding too. And that's an important thing. Yeah, there have been some misses, but every front office has misses. You know, their messaging hasn't been great too, but most front offices don't talk. I see people like, where's Griff? Why haven't we heard from him? Derek Favors, thank you. You don't hear from most front offices regularly, right? Like, that's not what they do. So I'm not upset by some of that stuff, right? Them not being, forthcoming on timelines for Zion and all that. A lot of this, they think he should be back and then he's just not. And that's a Zion thing, not a team thing necessarily, right? Like, So, what I'm trying to say with this is there's good and bad with the front office. Does that mean you should fire them? Yeah, there's a valid case to fire them, but I think there's also a valid case to keep them too. And sometimes you've just got to play the hand that you're dealt, right? You're playing poker. Sometimes you get cards that suck and there's nothing you can do about it. Sometimes you just get a bad hand that you can't win with. And a lot of that is what's happened to the Pelicans, right? That's not a fun thing to hear and to try and kind of absorb and understand and contextualize, because you want to feel like, oh, it could have been different and we weren't just going to lose from the get-go and it was never going to work out. There's a feeling of like, I'm trying to think of the word that I want to use here, but you don't like that feeling. So you play the hand you're dealt, and sometimes it's just simply a losing hand. And that's kind of the way I'm viewing it right now. Could it change? Yeah. But when you look at some of this right now, that's kind of what it feels like a little bit here. And so that is something that is really frustrating when it comes to like the front office and just the team in general. I don't think they've done a horrible job. Should they be fired? Maybe, maybe not. I think you could go either way on that, but I definitely do think Willie Green is the type of player that probably shouldn't play or coach, probably shouldn't be here next season when it comes to it. So let's keep going through your comments here and some of this here as I scroll through them here. Joel Vanille, what do you think is the biggest reason causing the absolute bad interior defense lately? I think, part of it is you're just losing, and that's really disappointing, and they're lacking some sort of energy too. Misi's young, he's developing, right? And you're seeing Misi hit a wall right now, and I think part of it is also, it took a while for DeJounte Murray to just get going. Him and Herb Jones should be really kind of pressing the perimeter, wrecking the point of attack, and you're not really finding that to be the case. And that's kind of been the biggest disappointing thing. They were really good about not letting teams get into the paint and shoot last year, just kind of eliminating that. But I don't know. It's been kind of weird when it comes to that. The fact that they're so bad defensively when, look, Zion's not a great defender. Ingram's not a great defender. You shouldn't be this bad. That's disappointing, especially because that's kind of like Willie Green's identity. And that does say something about the coaching too. I also think it's worth mentioning that, I'm a big believer that offense and defense are really connected. And it's not like one or the other, right? I think you see this team having a lack of offense or turning the ball over, and then teams just run down the court and score in transition, right? Like if you do a layup in transition, that counts as points in the paint. You're literally scoring them in the paint. So that's definitely part of it, right? West Bank Rick, shout out to you, buddy. Jonas Valanciunas, when he was here, our defense was 6. Yeah, it was 6 for 2 years in a row with Jonas Valanciunas. It's not the big men that's causing the issues. It's really just the guards and people on the perimeter, and that's been what's so bad. I noticed that early on in the year that they were allowing guys to like attack and cut in there and score in a way that they frankly hadn't been in the past. Maybe it meant that the past 2 years were a little bit of smoke and mirrors when it comes to that, but overall, no, it was not. That's been really bad and just really, really disappointing this season here when it comes to all of that. People talking about Herb's offense. I see a bunch of y'all saying that here. In terms of that, it comes in waves, right? And that's what's been so disappointing. And I do think in a different offense, he'd be able to score. This is someone who gives you high activity. He'll cut, he'll move, he'll screen, he'll roll, he'll do all those things. They don't use him in that way. And so part of that has to do with the coaching and just their offensive game plan of like, you go play isolation one-on-one and then just kick it out to Herb. There's probably ways to involve him more than you could. Him going 0 for 3 and scoring 0 points in this game is not great and just says that, there's better things that you can do here when it comes to all of that. So that's not great. Lorenko Mora says, do you think Cooper Flagg can save the franchise? Look, I don't think the franchise is in a horrible spot as long as you get the right players and the right coach. Simple as that. Cooper Flagg's going to be good. I think if you're looking for Cooper Flagg, and I was talking to a couple media people about this literally last night, if you expect Cooper Flagg to come in and give you 30 points per game and be like, let's go, we've got this guy, he's not going to do that. But is he someone that can come in and give you 5, 7, and 7 and be more of a playmaker? Yeah, absolutely. And he looks NBA ready. He'll defend at a high level, but he's not going to be like a 25 point per game scorer, in my opinion. He's someone that's going to just be an all-arounded ready guy that can probably make an all-NBA. Think of him as like a Jason Tatum, right? Like that maybe is the way to kind of look at him. Doesn't necessarily, has the ability to be an elite scorer, but doesn't do it consistently every single night, but is still a really good player because of all the other stuff that he does with you. That's not my NBA comp for him or anything like that, but that's kind of how I think he might end up kind of looking at the NBA level when it comes to it, at least right away. What is he averaging in college right now? 17.5 points, 4 assists, 8.5 rebounds, 1.3 blocks, 1.6 steals. Like they're pretty good numbers, but you look at those and you're like, that's not player of the year when it comes to it, right? Like, that's kind of what you look at when it comes to him. If you're looking for a guy that I think is going to be like an elite, like go-to scorer, it's probably Ace Bailey, maybe Dylan Harper too. Both those guys I think kind of look like it because they're, you have someone in Dylan Harper who's more of a facilitator, whereas Ace Bailey is definitely kind of like that lead scorer. Doesn't pass a ton, but can score at a variety of different levels. But you'll get a difference maker, a guy that, if you're still building around Zion Williamson, is really going to be able to complement the rest of your team in this draft, provided that you get a top 5 pick here. P. Fowler says, yes, I agree, Jake, get rid of the coach. Do you think the players played this way to also get the coach fired? I answered that. No, I don't think they're trying to do that, right? Like, that's not a reputation you want. No one's going to do that. They are professionals. There's just a lot going on around this team, and it's disappointing when it comes to all of that, right? Like, that's kind of really what it is. And yeah, I think there's just it's a lost season. Losing is exhausting. It's kind of infectious in a negative way when it comes to that. Let's see what other comments we got. People are just upset, which is totally fine. Cold chill. Willie Green shouldn't be coaching our team next year. Wes Mankind says, I think we need a better 3-point shooter. Building a roster around a Duke forward that doesn't take threes gives me PTSD when you can just draft a good shooter and let him cook. I think that's definitely a factor into it. If you're still going to have Zion, you need shooting. Cooper Flagg shooting 30.8% from 3, not on insane volume this year. That does worry me a little bit. Dylan Harper is shooting 38% from 3. What's Ace Bailey shooting? I don't have it off the top of my head. If my internet wants to, not work here. Bailey's shooting 34%. Really what you want to look at in terms of that is free throw percentage. Ace Bailey is at 55%. From free throw. Dylan Harper's 75%. That's significantly better. What's Cooper Flagg's number? 78%. So he probably can project to be a good NBA player. But that's worth keeping in mind. I'm going to do a show probably on Friday of now that Zion's back, what are the 3 things the team needs to do going forward? And one of them is keep shooting threes, because you need to do that. So there you go. Cold chilling. Could James Borrego be our coach next year? Look, there's a reason they brought him in, kind of as insurance for Willie Green. So if you think he might be the head coach, give him a chance. We saw Chris Finch last game. That was someone who was on the bench when they had Alvin Gentry. If they thought he could be the head coach, they would have promoted him. They didn't. Turns out he's a good head coach. That's kind of a big miss when it comes to this. Don't repeat that same mistake if you think Borrego is going to be it. But if it's we fired Willie Green at the end of the season, we're going to give the job to James Borrego, we're going to interview James Borrego, I'm going to be annoyed by that. You have a chance to kind of just get a jump start on it this season. Daniel Hagan says, other than Flagg, who are you scouting for the Pels? Really, I haven't gotten a ton into it. That's something that's going to start happening this month. But Dylan Harper, Ace Bailey, I'm really high on those guys. Igor from BYU has really started to fade as they've started playing better competition from the little I've seen about him. And we'll see a little bit more as the season goes on. But I'm going to start getting some of our draft guys on the show from Locked On NBA Draft and other things too, to kind of start talking about those prospects and everything here. G. Williams says having Ingram, Zion, and Trey in the game might have helped. Yeah, it might have helped. They would have lost, probably still, with the way that they played. But you wouldn't have been down 33 to a bad team. It's not about them losing. It's about how you look. And there's still enough talent that you shouldn't look this bad. And that's what's so unbelievably disappointing here. More talk about the 3-point shooting, which correct. With Zion, it's hard to shoot 43s per game if he's not taking them. They took 41 last night against the Timberwolves. You saw Murray take them. You saw CJ take them. That was pretty good. And I think that's important. King T says, is this the most disappointing season since you've been in the media? Yeah, probably. I've been covering this team for almost 15 years in some capacity. Right now, I think this is the most unfun season that we've covered so far. Even when they've been bad, there's at least interesting things there. And just when you don't have anybody playing, some of these games just truly feel like they don't matter. And that's not a really fun kind of situation to be in when it comes to it. The year that Anthony Davis asked out at the end of that was pretty awful. We were just talking about Christian Wood when, AD wasn't playing, all the drama that went along with that. That was pretty unfun, but that was a shortened season, at least because it came kind of later and it wasn't the whole season like this one has been. So that's been pretty rough in my opinion. Oh, here's actually a really good question. I like this one. Oh, this might be a crossover episode. Turbo Fred 02 says, in your opinion, are the Saints or Pels in a worse state? I think the Saints are. I think the Pels are in a better spot. I think the Pels can easily turn this around next year. If Zion's healthy, you do have him and you can still build around it. You saw how talented he is literally last night and why he's kind of a paradigm shifter for this team. If you get the right team around him, I think that's you can be good. I'm not a big Derek Carr guy. Even with a new head coach, if Derek Carr is still your QB, is it going to be that different? And my answer is no. Unless they get a good offensive line, are they going to be good? Probably not. Those are the things that kind of concern me with the Saints. Those are tougher to fix, in my opinion, than drafting someone, playing your lineup that is going to be good, and hoping for health. So the Pelicans have more they can do, while both teams don't seem to be in a great salary cap situation. And I don't want to say I know all about the NFL salary cap, not nearly at the level that I do here with the NBA. I think the Pelicans are. Look, if you look at which one is going to make, has a better chance of making the playoffs next season, which one is it? It's going to be the Pelicans, right? That's kind of the way we feel. That's how I feel. So there you go when it comes to all of that here. X-Sickle says, fire Griff. If Bryson is the reason we've drafted well and he's now the GM, I'm not sure what Griff does for us except having some okay trades and some terrible ones. He's leading the organization. He's like a CEO, right? Like, you give marching orders to people, you kind of set the vision, set the direction, and you tell Bryson Graham to go scout people, and then you trust him to do his job. There's value in all of that, I think. And, I think a lot of people don't understand how front offices work. You have about 10 people or so. You can go look up the Pelicans media guide from the season and see all the people in the front office. A lot of it is pretty collaborative. They'll have days where, everyone's meeting at 10 a.m. Everyone come here and everyone come with one trade that you think makes us better. And then, around the room, you talk about that trade. Could we get this done? Could we not get this done? Right? Like, that's kind of like a lot of the work they do. One of the things they also do, and I've seen this material before, is, they have binders and binders and binders of data and things like that. And a lot of it is like literally every NBA player, their contract, what their actual value is, what you think their next contract is, what you think their value is in a trade, so that you can kind of refer to that information. Oh, we're going to trade for this guy, but he's going to be a free agent next year. Here's what we think his next contract will be. Should we actually trade for him? Can we afford that or not? That's a lot of you don't realize how much work that takes when it comes to it, or statistical models, building those out to try and kind of project future performance and things as well. A lot of that is really important. So that's a lot of like what the front office does. And I think people have zero idea how they actually like function when it comes to those sorts of things. But that's just like a little peek at a lot of what they do here. All right, couple more if there are any here. And I think we're starting to kind of run out of all of this here. So we're going to start to wrap up. We've gone for almost an hour, so I think that's pretty good here. So why don't we just stop it right there unless something really, really comes in here. Paul T, this is also a really good point. Misi's not ready to be a starting center. I feel like he has hurt us more than he helps us with a few big blocks and dunks. Look, he's definitely hitting a bit of a rookie wall. He's further along than we thought he would be. And that's a really encouraging sign. And he's shown some flashes that like, oh yeah, he can be a starter going forward. But I don't think he's actively helping you win games right now. Not that he should be either. And I think that is worth keeping in mind too. The right expectations on a guy like that is an important thing to keep in mind too. He's playing a far larger role than he thought he was going to be, than the Pelicans thought he was going to be doing too. And I think that's important to keep in mind and put his type of games and performances in the right kind of context. The past two games are rough, right? He's gone up against some big dudes. And the Minnesota Timberwolves and Rudy Gobert is a terrible matchup for him. Ayton is tough, right? And so I think that's an important thing to consider here as well. So let's wrap it up there. Let me know what you thought about today's live show. We'll do more of these. We've got a bunch of people in here. I appreciate y'all so much for hanging out with me throughout this whole thing, staying for this whole thing. We've gone almost an hour here, so that's as good a time to stop it. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter, and I'll be back with y'all. This is technically the Thursday show, so we'll have one more show this week on Friday. Unless there's breaking news, we'll see if there is, and I'll see y'all next time.